So keeping it moving to the next topic of when clients are experiencing excellent service, there comes a time where they make the payment for the service, right? And a lot of times that can be a point of the interaction where it's kind of difficult to navigate at times, right? Like maybe it was the price was different than they expected, or maybe like you feel like the invoice is too high, because like our invoices, right, they automatically go off the forms. But the way that we teach pricing, the way that I try to look at it is, I want to have the client be happy to pay, but also have the professional be happy, right? And so to me, the invoice is just a guide of generally this is how the complexity of this situation is, but it's not to me at least, but maybe just because I've been doing it for a little longer, it's just a suggestion. It's not the real value in the client's eyes to me. So I would be interested to hear, but I know the invoice is very important for pricing, and you mentioned that in a previous discussion. Like, how often do you guys feel like the invoice correctly reflects the value? And how often do you feel like you need to adjust that, either taking the price down or up?
Maybe 50% of the time.
Okay, so it's about 50-50, where this is about right, okay.
Yeah, because then it's also like a personality thing. Like if you have a person that that they're going to be calling you throughout the year, because you can just tell. So
also,
it's like,
like a first ship repair, they'll add like extra forms that you don't need.
Worksheets.
Worksheets and stuff. And I have worksheets priced out at like $1 or whatever.
Yeah.
So it comes out like quite a lot more. So it's about 50% that I see also. That are either up or down.
Do you feel like that's kind of like, when you look at the invoice, how often are you thinking like, oh, that's like, I'm going to go with that, that's about right, versus like, hey, the client actually is seeing a different value than what this says?
I think I usually go with the invoices.
Okay.
If I if I see like, it's probably like for me, it's probably like a 10% that I change the invoice.
Okay, so it's fairly low.
Yeah, it's really low for me.
And does going with the invoice, and because the invoice itemizes all the forms and stuff, does it kind of remove that need to explain how the pricing is arrived at, and it's kind of just there for the client? It's clarity.
I usually tell them like, okay, the invoice is 500, and they say, oh, what we have been doing is like, we tell them the price up front. Like, we don't prepare the work and then be like, oh, by the way, it's gonna be 500.
So how do you know ahead of time then?
Well, we look at the paperwork. We look at their documents, and then we're like, okay, based on the information we received from you, this is about the amount that it's going to cost.
Around this range.
And
I think that's one of the new clients.
Yeah, the new clients. The existing clients, we already know their history.
and if it changes, we let them know why it went up. Like if they have investments and they didn't before, because a lot of people now are like, because of Robinhood and those apps. In crypto, there's more people investing in crypto and in stocks because now they have it on their phone. And so those are the only differences. Like, well, I didn't make any money, and then you kind of have to, well, you didn't make any money, but because of the forms, you have to report it.
Of Robinhood.
Yeah, you have to report it, because then you're gonna get a letter.
Yeah.
I feel like these past 2 years, we've gotten less questioning about it.
Yeah, it has been less.
Like
Do you mainly go with the invoice, or do you feel like you adjust it quite a bit?
Leading up to this deadline, when I definitely was adjusting, and just like in general, I feel like I was adjusting maybe 75 with like as is, the 25% adjusting, because there was a lot of communication on the off season.
Yep.
With business clients in particular. So all my business clients, I had to increase but no one questioned it. Like,
well, I think that's what I was going to kind of get to. I've thought about this issue a lot in terms of, like, I remember when we were first working at Pronto, and we were like, every client would talk about the price and getting the price lower, like almost every client. And that's kind of like tough to keep having that interaction over and over again, right? And so The three components of value for the client, I feel like I really deeply understand. Like if you're going to adjust an invoice it's usually upwards adjustment, but there are some times where it can go down. If we look at the 3 R's of how the client's actually viewing it, relationship is number 1. So if they feel they have that relationship, and you guys have mentioned that we can have communication, like you're not just doing something right now, but into the future, I have this relationship that I have somebody I can trust, I can go to. So the clients, especially the COVID, and especially the business clients, that has expanded the client understanding of that this is a big part of the value of why I'm here, this relationship, right? And with us, it's not just with one person, it's with our whole team. So I can have these people that I can access, right? So that's a big part of what I'm paying for. So are you able to measure when you're pricing a client or interacting with a client, you have to make a lot of deposits into that bank, right? So that's how you're building the value. So when the price comes, the client's like, yeah, that's totally worth it. I feel good about it. Secondly, and we talked about this with the TurboTax comparison thing, right? As people come in and they're looking at what's the refund that I have with TurboTax and what's the refund that I have with you. So that's the ROI, right? The return on investment. So whatever I'm paying you, I want to be saving more and getting more back, way more than your fee. Like the higher that delta is and that difference is, the more valuable your service is. So if you're looking at pricing, right, like did you actually help that person save money versus like self-preparing versus another preparer? That's actually a very key, whether you price that into the invoice or how you go about doing that, realizing that is especially for business clients, that is a lot of the value. Like in reality, when I'm looking at the service, I'm saying like, did I save money? If I pay $2,000, I save $10,000, I just came out $8,000 ahead, right? So measuring that, seeing how that is. And then thirdly is the risk thing. So you mentioned a lot about letters, right? The IRS increased that over 1,000%. So what is the risk of this particular scenario? So they put a lot of pressure on earned income credit, right? They put a lot of pressure on certain situations, right? Like passive losses. So what is the risk to the client and what is their understanding of that risk is going to determine a lot about what they're ready to pay, because they're paying for protection from those things. So bringing that into the scenario that this doesn't just include like taking care of this paperwork for you, but God forbid if something you did get a letter, whatever it is, we're able to address that for you. So when we sit down with clients, I want us to be able to, definitely use the invoice, have that be effective. And I think that, but understanding at a deeper level what clients are really seeing value in. And these are the 3 factors that I really see happening. So thanks for the good discussion on that.